Good afternoon, everyone. Sean, are we good on the, okay? All right. And I will speak very slowly so that we don't actually start until Ms. Love is seated. Good to see you.
Sorry.
No worries. I would like to call this afternoon's meeting of the Jail Oversight Board to order. And as always, we would start by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is the first opportunity for public comment, and as always, the items at the, any public comment at the top of our agenda must be on items that are specifically on our agenda for this afternoon. And if folks from the public would like to speak, please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Please give your name and address, and speak into the mic, keeping your mask on. If there's anyone from the public? Seeing none, we will move to the next item, which is approval of the November minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. King.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Corson. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next item is an approval of the November Warden report. Is there a motion to approve the report?
Make a motion to approve the report.
Thank you, Controller Phillips. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Your Honor. Motion is second. Any questions or comments on the, oh, came
It
from
was
my
me.
left. Yeah, you got thrown off. I thought it was Judge Brennan. Any questions or comments before we vote? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next item is our staffing penalty for November. Warden Mellon?
Good afternoon. So the staffing penalties for November were $267,620.43. This is a 69,000-hour decrease from last month. The current staffing rate is 78%, which is a 1% decrease from last month, and the staffing rate with the staff on leave is 72%, with a 2% increase. So it turns out the GO is down another 10 correctional officers, so there's 85 correctional officer vacancies, but they have made strides in having people return to work, and they've also hired in other departments. But this is the first time in months that I've seen second and third shift fully staffed, through people coming into work and through mandates and volunteers. So it's a little better than we were in October.
Any questions, comments from the board? Donna, I'm not sure if you want to speak to it here or later on, but if you could comment at one point about how we're doing with regard to lockdowns as it relates to staffing and what the actions have been.
So if we are under 25 vacancies on a shift, we will have inmates out 4 at a time. And over 25 vacancies, we can get the inmates out for 1 at a time for a half hour for a phone call and a shower. And we've been doing that on a pretty steady basis. I know this is December, except the last 2 weekends. December isn't looking too good with vacancies, especially on the weekends. But for November, we were out a lot, at least 4 at a time. You know, every time we keep talking about expanding that, then we get another coronavirus variant that, you know, kind of puts us on pause.
But given the rejiggering that the current superintendent has been doing, my understanding is that the number of days where there is no recreation time is down versus November. Is that right?
It's very much down.
Okay. Not exactly where we want it to be, but better than it was.
Correct.
Is that fair? Okay. Anything else for the warden on staffing penalties? If not, is there a motion to approve the staffing penalties? Thank you, Controller. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, and I'm not sure who that came from. The microphones and speakers throw me off. Any questions or comments before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Donna. Item 6 is a coronavirus update.
So for the month of November, 169 inmates were tested. 2 were positive. 1 continues being quarantined. The other one's recovered. Both were asymptomatic, and that was due to discharges. We still continue to test discharges. 103 new commits reported that they were vaccinated. And on December 1st, ACME came in and ran a vaccination clinic, and we had 53 inmates vaccinated. So our current population has a 31% vaccination rate. That's up 1% from last month. I did reach out from the last meeting to the Citizen Medical Corps. I spoke to Dr. O'Mahony, and they will come out early January to run a vaccination clinic for us.
Excellent.
As far as staff, 6 staff members tested for the virus in November. 1 was positive. He still hasn't come back to work. That's pretty recent. So as far as our total rate, to date, 2,723 inmates were tested. We had 169 positives. 536 staff were tested. We had 148 positives.
Okay, and as always, I mean, those numbers, probably 90+% of those positives were in the first few months of the pandemic. I will note 2 positives out of 169 tested is an impressively low positivity rate. And they're typically people who have been at the jail for some number of weeks or months, right? They're people who are being tested upon transfer,
right?
Typically.
To another institution.
So that's a pretty good marker. I mean, the fact that you're essentially having a random, testing of 169 inmates during the course of a month. If only 2 are showing up positive, it's a pretty good indication that we don't have latent, unknown spread within the prison.
I think the big test will be when we send the state people upstate.
Yeah, and I think the vaccination rate of 31% is obviously lower than we want it to be, but look, I think this is a population where it can be challenging to, not to generalize, but it's lower than we'd like it to be. But I think any efforts we're making to vaccinate folks while they're in the jail is a good step forward. So I appreciate the.
And we're getting a list together for the January vaccination. So.
Great. Anything else for the warden from the board? All right, we'll move on to the next item, contraband update. Yep.
Okay, so there were 8,645 cell searches in November, 88 canine searches, 7 shakedowns. We had 2 car searches on different shifts. So we're trying to switch it up a little bit. Went to car searches, no contraband were found. This is more recent. Maybe in the last few weeks, I've been sending you reports. We've had multiple contraband finds, including narcotics, jail-made weapons, and cell phones. So we've been meeting with GO. We continue to work with our investigators, staff, our GTL analyst who listens to all the phone calls, and CID to combat contraband in the facility. We're increasing the number of shakedowns. We're increasing our numbers of urinalysis. All incidents of contraband. We've had an increase in inmate assaults on staff. All of those are being referred to CID for investigation and possible prosecution.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Donna, I know we had discussed this week via email about the contraband that come through the mail, and where are we at as far as status of possibly moving forward with a different system?
We'll talk to Majid, and hopefully we can schedule the interviews for the RFP responses we had for the mail.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments on the board? Well, I will say, I mean, this is an area obviously that we still need to do better. The fact that these shakedowns are occurring and are coming up with positive, findings, and just anecdotally, we are quite aware that, contraband is still quite present at the jail. So this is an area where we continue to need to do better.
And actually, we meet a lot about it. And we have a new investigator that was the chief of investigations for Upper Darby. He's an excellent asset to what we do now.
Yeah.
The male RFP and pursuing that to the end, because we've been talking about it. We met the people, we saw a demonstration. My understanding is it's so simple to come in on the paper that, that is just very difficult. So that mail system should help a lot. So I look forward to seeing that all the way through.
Yeah, and when such a high percentage of the folks that come into the jail are dealing with substance abuse issues, we've talked about in the past how, jail can be an opportunity to reset one's lives and to be removed from the parts of their prior environment that, enabled their addiction. But if we're putting them into a jail where temptation is prevalent, we're doing quite the opposite. So it's, I think we're all very mindful of how important this is.
I appreciate it. I mean, you don't want to put the inmates back to their own triggers.
No, and as we're, discussing the RFPs for the transition and different things like that, I think it's very important to remember the day-to-day operations. We've been talking about the mail RFP for quite some time, so I think that absolutely needs to be a priority of this board.
I had a question, Warden Miller. Are there ever any searches or shakedowns third shift with employees?
Or at the state police?
Yes.
No.
With the employees at the prison, the guards, the ones that work the third shift. Are there ever any, I know there's a certain time that you have to do a shakedown according to the protocol, but do they do it third shift?
Would they do it third shift? They could. I mean, we actually.
Is there a contraband search for
right now?
Yeah, it's a Is there a contraband search on third shift?
No, not that I know of, not since I've been there.
Okay. Now I'm curious because when we hear about all of these cell phones and chargers and, this is something that a resident can't get in, supposedly, right? And we know that may be an internal issue. Now, if I was a guard and I knew that they never searched me third shift and we can just come in and out, and I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just throwing it out there to you.
Actually, I have something in the works with GTL for the phone search. We're waiting for a FCC ruling on that.
Okay,
Because we would have to turn off the tower.
Anything else from the board on this topic? All right. Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
The next item for this evening is the appointment of our new permanent warden, Ms. Laura Williams. I will entertain a motion to appoint, and then we can have some questions or comments on the item. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. And there's a second from Brian. All right. Anyone like to lead off the discussion?
Mr. Chair, I can do that. Ms. Williams was identified to the county through the executive search consultant we hired, Affion Public. Ms. Williams then went through an interview with, I think, as many as 20 people, and it's one of the few times I've seen a unanimous outcome from that interview process. Personally, when we're going through the interviews, usually a lot of times you look at your watch and think, when is this session going to end? But with Ms. Williams, I looked at my watch and I was disappointed that after 55 minutes, we only had 5 minutes left. She started her professional career with a degree in psychology from the University of Pittsburgh and has a master's in counseling psychology. Her career path started with family counseling and migrated into counseling with people with substance abuse problems. And that led her into the field of corrections, where she's currently the deputy chief warden at the Allegheny Correctional Facility. In that role, she is overseeing health care and rehabilitative services. The interview, her background are consistent with the direction and that the county wants to go in with our community's values. She has been reviewed, and as a director, council has to approve the appointment parallel to the Jail Oversight Board's acceptance of the nomination from the executive director. I highly endorse and support her employment and leader for the change we want to see out at George W. Hill, and ask for your approval of her appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. Any other thoughts, questions?
In the interview with the candidate, she was so articulate and poised, and it's not rehearsed. It just flowed from her knowledge and understanding of some of the issues, and she was just a really impressive candidate. And I thought everyone in the interview process in my group, we did it in certain groups, so we weren't even all together. Really had a favorable view of her and her knowledge and understanding of where we want to go, and the importance of safety and mental health, and what the jails of the 21st century are facing. Not something new, and delivering services to people, as well as keeping our public and the detainees safe, and our corrections officers. So I thought she was really top notch.
And just to piggyback off what Ms. Phillips, during that interview, I had the privilege of, we had a number of excellent candidates that I felt the county put together, but sitting down with Ms. Phillips, she came with the mindset of rehabilitation, with the background of treatment, and came with the values of looking at George W. Hill as an opportunity, like Mr. Madden spoke about earlier, as an opportunity for starting point for individuals, that in a safe and sober, structured environment, that with the proper rehabilitation, the proper treatment, proper reentry, that this could be very beneficial to not just George W. Hill, but Delaware County as a whole. So I was just very impressed that she came in with that same mindset that we've been discussing and describing the past 2 years since being on the Oversight Board. So she definitely has had my full support.
Any other questions or comments? For my part, just to piggyback off of some of the comments of my colleagues, Ms. Williams really breaks the mold that one typically sees with regard to leadership of a county jail. And I think if we want to truly, sort of turn the page on the old model that, I would assert has been largely built around the warehousing of humans, and instead really build a model that is laser focused on rehabilitation and reducing recidivism. I think Ms. Williams really is the person to lead that day to day. So I am very excited for her to cross the state of Pennsylvania and join us here in Delco. I think while she has, inevitably, you're going to come to a leading position without, from one side or the other, right? Unless you've had the top position as warden previously, you're always going to, have to supplement some part of running a jail that you haven't yet had. Ms. Williams is on the treatment side. She hasn't come up through the security side. What that means is that she's going to have to ensure that, she's supplemented by someone who has really strength in that side of things. But no doubt we will collectively do so. I also want to take the opportunity to, and it won't be our last, but to thank again Donna Mellon for being the forever servant to Delaware County that she has been. Donna thought she was, going to be able to, breeze into retirement, and she just can't get away from George W. Hill. So I want to thank you once more for stepping up and serving so diligently and, around the clock for, for this challenging time for George W. Hill and for agreeing to continue as interim warden until the end of January when Ms. Williams comes on. So thank you again, Donna. So unless there's any other comments or questions with regard to the appointment?
I would only say that unfortunately, I didn't get to participate in the interview process due to scheduling conflicts. However, based on the curriculum vitae and some of the other candidates that I was able to see, I believe that she would add a new dimension to the prison. So I support my colleagues in that conclusion. But unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of interviewing her.
Understood. Thank you, Your Honor. If nothing else, all in favor of the appointment? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, next item is a discussion of audit services. And for this, I will look to our controller to lead things off.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Madden. This pertains to a contract that was entered into with the Prison Inspection Board near the end of its, when the structure had the prison board in charge. It's a contract for auditing services, but it's actually what's called an agreed upon procedures, where they basically look at certain transactions and do a bank reconciliation. And at the time it was entered, there were 6 bank accounts that they were really looked at. 3 were being held by GEO and 3 were held by the prison. Following some work that was done by my office and looking at bank accounts, we actually worked with the prison, the then warden, and 3 of the bank accounts were eliminated and the money was sent back to the county treasury. So there really are only 3 bank accounts. There's quarterly work and there's also annual work. It's a rather expensive contract at $31,315 now to basically review 3 bank accounts and another $3,000 for quarterly work. We believe that we can bring this work in-house to the controller's office because it's really bank reconciliation work as we view it. And if needed, we would propose that we would do an RFP with the Jail Oversight Board, looking at proposals to possibly do an audit upon the transition. What we found is as new offices transition, we'd like to do an audit or have it done really by outside firm to sort of set the base of what the situation is coming in. So subject to the solicitor's approval, we would like that to look at this and not proceed further with this contract. It was a 3-year contract given at the beginning of 2019. They've only done 1 year's work. It's a year behind. 2020 hasn't been started yet. We have paid bills for this, but it seems as not a great use of our funds for the county. So I'm proposing that we terminate this contract, subject to the solicitor's review of it. But I think that any work that they've done, of course, should be paid for. But subject to that, it's an excessive amount. In fact, half of the work has been eliminated since the end of 2019. So it's really only 3 accounts. And now that we have a business manager on board as part of the county, it seems like a very good time to reset this work. So that's really the discussion.
And so, Ms. Phillips, you're saying that the relationship as it's currently constructed can be terminated effective immediately?
Well, I'd like that to be subject to solicitor's review, but if possible, I think it should be terminated. They haven't commenced the 2020 work. Normally, the 2020 work would be well done by now because we're about to finish up 2021 and we would embark on that. So I'm not sure. There may have been delays related to GEO from my discussions with Donna Mellon, but really half this work has been eliminated, and it's a very expensive contract for this amount of work. I believe if we put it out for an RFP, we could save substantial money or bring all the bank reconciliation in-house. We routinely reconcile bank accounts for various areas of the county, and including working with the Treasury. So subject to solicitor's approval, I would propose that we terminate this contract.
Could we wait till the solicitor actually reviews it before we terminate and put out a request for proposals? Because if we're in breach of this contract, it could end up in litigation against the county.
Well, I think what we could do is we could recommend its termination, subject to the solicitor's approval of that. I'm looking at the solicitor. Is that a course of action that you would suggest?
Yeah.
You want to?
Leave the mask on or take, okay. I can't even keep up at this point. Good afternoon, everybody. Shelley Smith, solicitor to the board. I think the board can, in fact, make a recommendation to terminate subject to the solicitor's approval, and then it wouldn't take effect until the solicitor has approved it. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable course of action to follow.
And then the RFPs wouldn't be solicited until thereafter the solicitor issues a letter indicating that the contract can be lawfully terminated. Correct?
I think that's my intention, because I actually think that the work, some of the work can definitely be brought in-house.
But it's brought in-house. Your office is also subject to an annual audit, and these accounts would be part of that, correct?
The whole county is subject to an annual audit, correct?
Okay.
So I guess that's a question that I had. I was hearing an RFP, then I was hearing bring it in-house. So if we bring it in-house globally, if we bring it in-house and retain it in-house, there is an audit that would be part of all the financials of the county. That's question one. Or are we suggesting parse it out and retain another auditing firm to do what isn't brought in-house? I hear two things, so.
Well, I'm proposing that this work is actually the equivalent of checking your bank account and seeing what checks have gone out and what's come in. It's bank reconciliation. I believe that work can be brought in-house to the county. The prison has always been part of the county. It's part of our audit now. So this would be just a function of the financial controls that the county exercises over any office. If we determine that there's another audit that would be recommended, I would be prepared to come back to this board and say that we've looked it over and we recommend a resetting of an audit. Now, I will tell you that I believe the controller has the authority to initiate an audit of any area. So subject to that qualification, I think that we could do that at any time, but I think we would bring it back to the board so that the board would understand. And if the contract was more than $25,000, it would go to county council. So it may be that we could get work done for less than $25,000 if we did an RFP, but if it was over that, we would bring it here, recommendation, and then it would have to go to council for approval of the contract. So I think there is two parts. One is a bank reconciliation work that I think we could bring in-house. The second part is a potential audit of where do we stand financially upon the transition of the whole operation into the county.
And for that, you're recommending a third party?
That would be a third party. That would be a third party.
And then once the transition happens, would you recommend that we retain this third party auditing firm or bring everything in-house once the transition's over?
If we could bring it in-house, I would do that, but I don't believe we have the auditing capability right now. So right now we've been using outside auditors through an RFP process to do targeted audits. But the big county audit, that is also done by an outside firm.
Thank you.
I just think we can save money on this. I think we can bring the work in, and that's the basis for my recommendation.
Okay, so what I'm hearing would be if anyone would like to move for the recommendation that we terminate the agreement with, what is the name of the group?
It's with Christopher Reynolds Incorporated.
Christopher Reynolds Incorporated, subject to review by solicitor, subject to solicitor's approval.
I'll make that
I
motion.
don't feel like you're ready to make a recommendation. It didn't sound like you really have something that you're recommending to us, except that you want to terminate with this gentleman. I don't know who he is, and it doesn't matter, but it doesn't sound like you're ready to recommend. You're like ready to start looking to put something together to recommend. So I would ask that you wait and give us a recommendation instead of a double edge. Well, we might go this way, we might go this way. So I think you should wait until you have a clearer recommendation to this board.
I appreciate that, Your Honor. I am totally clear that we can bring the bank reconciliation in-house. That's mainly what this work is about. The second part of it is really, they do not do an audit of the prison. The second part is a recommendation for future upon the transition. So it's really two parts. The work that's being done under this contract, I believe we can bring in-house now. So that's the basis of my recommendation, to terminate it, save $31,000 of taxpayer funds, and if, we can do it in-house, we can reconcile the bank accounts.
If you can bring it in-house, then I'd support that fully, but it doesn't sound like that's what you're saying. You want to recommend that, which I agree with, but you're not sure, and you might have to still RFP some of it out.
If I could, what I'm hearing is, this is for a bank reconciliation. This is not for a full audit of the jail.
Correct.
No, I understand
Totally
that.
separately. The idea that the jail should be truly audited by a third party, that's a separate conversation. The latter and what we do there shouldn't bias the view from the controller that this is essentially a waste of money. We don't need an outside person to reconcile bank accounts. The controller's office can do that themselves.
Well, that part I would agree with, but it's not what's being said here.
I think that's what is being said. I guess I'm laying a foundation for the future, that upon the transition, we are going to take these bank accounts in. They will become part of the county treasury. And at that point, we may wish to do a full audit of where we stand as a county. We've done that for incoming row offices to make sure people have a basis. So perhaps I complicated it by saying there's two parts, but this contract can be terminated and save money. And if there's a need for an audit, we'll bring it back to the board as subject to the authority that we have to do an audit anyway. Wherever money's being paid out, we could audit any department subject to if it's a contract over $25,000, it goes to county council. So I think it's really just a clear thing that we can save money by terminating this contract. We will not be missing any work. In fact, they're a year behind.
So is there a motion to recommend the termination of the relationship with Christopher Reynolds, Inc., subject to solicitor approval?
I'll make the motion to terminate the agreement with Christopher Reynolds, subject to solicitor's approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion, a second. Any further questions or comments on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to say no at this point, just because it has not been clear to me what they're actually proposing.
Understood. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is our deprivatization update, and I will look to Mr. Majid Al-Sayeh from Malta.
Good evening, members of the Jail Oversight Board. The team has been busy this last month on a number of fronts, interviewing vendors for the contracts that we're hoping to award. Donna Mellon has been working closely with us on all of the tasks. And we want to welcome Lisa Mastrati, who joined the prison organization last Monday, December 6th. And I hear from Lisa and Donna more times than I want to count every day. But we're getting a lot of work done. We've been meeting weekly with corporate folks at GEO to coordinate the transition tasks. They've been cooperative, they've been collaborative. We've been working well together on that, and so I want to express our appreciation for that. We're doing quite a bit of work on the personnel side, HR side, IT side, the county IT department. Lisa Rydell has been very active in documenting all the systems that need to transition over or to be purchased to fulfill the prison's needs. So that's been very helpful to the team. I do want to introduce Juno, the HR firm that we hired to help us with the overall task of staffing the prison. They are here this evening. I'd like them to come and introduce themselves and say a few words about what they're doing.
Do we need the overhead or?
Not for this.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm introduction. I'm Jennifer Kalcheski from Juno Search Partners. For those of you who are not familiar with Juno, we are a third-party recruitment firm based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're proudly women-owned. I'm joined today by our Vice President of Growth and Strategy, Steve Britton, and another talent manager, Alexis Redcross. We have been actively working with Warden Mellon as well as Mrs. Mastrati on the transition and focusing on the talent process. So we are experts in the talent acquisition realm, and we are working on several different initiatives to ensure adequate staffing, to ensure that the internal and incumbent staff feel valued and recognized and heard, as well as to interview externally. So we've created a careers page in the absence of NeoGov, and we're very excited to work on this project. So we have a team of people who are dedicated resources to ensuring a smooth and successful transition of all talent, both incumbent and external. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just comment that, this, as we looked at the heavy lifting in front of us with this transition, there's obviously a tremendous amount of hiring that needs to take place. So, the county was not equipped to do that sort of heavy lift on a personnel front internally, and I appreciate Juno's help in doing so.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to participate. We're very excited to be a part of the deprivatization. So thank you, and thanks for having us today.
Thank you.
So we are bringing before you tonight a number of proposals that the team is recommending awards, and we will walk through those one by one.
Excuse me one moment. Do we need to announce our executive session?
Yeah, I
Because
was
we're on to this
gonna-
topic now.
It's what we can do now or right before we vote
All
is
right.
fine. But
Thank you.
to Ms. Love's point, there was an executive session yesterday held by the Jail Oversight Board. Given the fact that these procurements were competitive, there was an opportunity for the Jail Oversight Board to, cover these three items in executive session prior.
So the first proposal involves the food service for Delaware County's prison. We received two proposals, and a committee was formed with staff from the prison procurement, the IT department, Alta, and CGL. We conducted interviews with the vendors, and the selection committee unanimously recommends that award of the food service contract be given to Aramark. The value of the contract is approximately $3.1 million, as compared to the budget that we had of $3.3 million. The value of the contract will vary depending on the approach to the commissary contract as well as kitchen renovations, but we expect it will not exceed $3.1 million. Any questions on food service?
Does Aramark do other prisons besides, obviously, their intent to do Delaware County Prison?
Yes, and actually we have representatives from Aramark. I want to invite them to come up and introduce themselves, and they can answer your questions. And Sean, I'm sorry, we probably want to take the. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is Bernard Peroni, and I'm a growth director with Aramark.
Good afternoon. Stephen Grant, District Manager for Aramark. I oversee our Pennsylvania Business and Correctional Services.
Hello, everybody. Nicole McVaugh. I'm the Director of Rehabilitative Programming and Community Enhancement for the Corrections Line of Business at Aramark.
To answer your question, sir, we currently serve 9 counties in the state of Pennsylvania, food commissary facility services.
thing came over, I don't know who has access to it, I don't even know what Pennsylvania Watch is, but we get these emails sometimes, and it was critical, and to me, Aramart always had a good reputation. I didn't know anything about the outside services with prisons, but you're a vendor for other institutions and other forums that you've provided services for over the years, and I'm not aware of any issues with you, but there was something that come up that was critical of some of the, I don't know if you're aware of that through this Pennsylvania Watch, whatever that is. We get emails, and again, I take it with a grain of salt, but nevertheless, are you aware of that?
Yes, we are, and those do come through, and I don't want to say often, but they do come through. And yes, we understand and are aware that mass incarceration, it's a criminal justice issue. We are aware of that, but what we've come to do is provide great food service, and that's what we do. We provide healthy meals for those who are incarcerated. We view them as consumers. They are our customers. They are, part of what we do on a daily basis. So, just like we have at Aramark, we have, 9 different lines of business. So as a lot of our competitors really rely on people who are incarcerated to stay incarcerated. We do not do that. We can serve you a hot dog at a ball game. We can employ you in our uniforms line of business or any line of business that we offer. So while we are aware of these articles that are out there, we do stand behind what we do, and that's serve great food to the people that we serve.
What about the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections? Have they ever found that there was issues with the services you provided?
So for the PADOC, we do a consultative model with the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, and I am unaware of any issues that we've ever had with them. And that's, to date that we do consultative, we provide our systems and our supply chain to the Pennsylvania DOC.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can add, one of the overwhelming features about the proposal from Aramark was their ability to work with the county on the upgrade and improvement of the kitchen facilities. It'll certainly be no easy task to continue to provide food service while we're renovating that facility. So I think we're comfortable. I know we're comfortable with what they've offered and their spirit of partnership with us as we not only provide healthy meals to the people in our care, but also convert what right now is something of a liability into a strong asset. And those are the kitchen facilities.
Yeah, I would echo that one of the things that I was impressed with hearing was the flexibility with which you could address the kitchen needs of how the county wants to go with that. I think for all of us going on a tour of the prison, the kitchen was something that stood out as something that needs immediate attention. And I think as we move to the transition, this is really important. And this gave us some flexibility of how we want to address it. And I thought that was impressive, and it made it a favorable response to our request for proposals.
And they did provide a detailed design for renovation of the kitchen and replacement of equipment that the committee was very pleased with. The cost of the renovation of the kitchen is roughly $1.5 million. They're willing to embed that cost in the price per meal, as a fixed price per meal that the county pays for, and recovered over a number of years. That's part of their proposal. And I do want to add that they won't be operating in a vacuum at the prison. They'll be managed by Lisa Mastrati, by the new incoming warden. They will be, checked and balanced, quality control, by yourselves. Many prisons don't have the oversight that you provide to this prison and will be providing in the future. So I think that's a good thing.
I had a question.
Difficult to manage anything from this room. So it's really depending on the internal operations of the prison, certainly the warden and the staff there to tell this board. And obviously we get complaints from residents as we continue to get. Who's the current food service provider?
GEO Self operates the kitchen.
But GEO does it themselves.
Yeah.
I would just possibly recommend delaying this vote. And My reason is the PA Watch that Judge Whalen addressed, that article, some of the same verbiage that members of this county have said about the current food service run by GEO. So yes, I think the design to improve the environment and the physicality of the food service area is wonderful. But without vetting what was published, true or untrue, could mirror some of the things that members of this county who obviously wanted to get rid of GEO have said about the food service that GEO provided. And please, folks from Aramark, I've had good experiences with you in the healthcare world, so I'm a little concerned that I'm voting to oust someone to bring in someone else when the litany of complaints are very similar. I just think we have to keep that in mind. I'm saying no today. I'm asking, can we delay the vote to possibly vet out these accusations?
All right. Well, I would respectfully say that we're 3.5 months away from the plan to take over the prison. This is a major part of prison operation, and I don't think it would be prudent to delay the vote. They need to hire staff. They need to start ordering supplies and equipment in an economy where there are delays on every front. So I would just recommend that not be the case.
And is it prudent to make a bad decision?
I think this is a good decision, respectfully. This is not a bad decision. Every large corporation has critics that'll drag out a story here and there. I expect the prison administration will be managing this contract and monitoring quality of food and quality of service. And if they don't, you will be hearing from people, as the judge said.
Yeah, I mean, for my part, and first of all, I think PA Watch, just to be clear, is an anonymous member of the public who is sending from a Gmail account, articles that are critical of a litany of things. And my sense is it largely is, well, I don't want to speculate, but that it's just so Your Honor knows, it's just an anonymous member of the public sending us articles. To Ms. Love's concerns, to be very blunt, I have some concerns of my own. I think any time that you are bringing in a for-profit entity to take on certain facets of management of a jail where, the customer does not have the typical means, of expressing complaints about the product being given. Now, granted, the food being served will also be going to the corrections officers. My understanding from the proposal from Aramark is that they do, certain things to get surveys on the quality of the food from both inmates and COs. So, I think they're aware of the concern structurally as well. But to Ms. Love's, question, I think the reality is that we have taken the step to deprivatize. We need to have food services when the clock, strikes midnight on the transfer. And having gone through an RFP process, with Aramark being the vendor that's recommended to us, at this point, I think it's the prudent thing to do is to move forward with an understanding, however, that we now have direct oversight of this component of the management of the prison. We don't have GEO in the middle. So if there's concern that we see about the product quality via the COs, via inmates, this contract is terminable. And Aramark is well aware that this is a very active board, this is a very active county in terms of the public and the quality of what we get here. So we will hold them to the standards they say that they have. And if we see otherwise, whether it's 6 months down the road, whether it's 2 years down the road, at any point, we can either bring this service in-house when we're better equipped to take that on. But right now, we have so many things moving that I think it's prudent to make sure we, effectively make this transition, that we bring in professional institutional help like we have here from Aramark. But I totally appreciate the concern.
Is the termination provision that you just referred to, Mr. Chairman, is that without cause? Because I don't know, I can see a contract, I saw the memo, and I appreciate Mr. Lazarus, the executive director, allowing us to come into his office. The problem was, started a jury trial last week that went into this week. I wasn't able to participate in the executive session yesterday because of the jury. And so I never had a chance to get to Mr. Lazarus' office to look at the request for proposals and the binders that he referred to. So I'm operating a little bit at a loss, but is that contract just able to terminate at the discretion of county council at least, if not this board?
Yes, there's a termination provisions clause. Mr. Alsay.
So they have given the county a proposal, and the law department is working with their lawyers to draft the terms of the contract. That is not complete.
It's not.
That's not complete yet.
Not agreed to yet.
Not agreed to yet, but the ask is for a recommendation to award this contract subject to the law department finalizing terms and conditions.
And to be clear, we would be making a recommendation. This contract also needs to be approved by county council at tomorrow night's meeting. So this would be, a recommendation of that.
Imagine, can you speak towards the references or have the folks from Aramark talk about the references that were provided?
Certainly, and I will say, when we did the interview some weeks back, I think they had 10 or 11 people on the interview, including a nutritionist, including, they do job training for residents of the prison to train them to work in food service when they go back, when they leave the prison. So there's a number of services that they provide that are not provided by the competition, but I'll let them talk a little further about that.
So there's a couple of things that I wanted to address, and the first is quality. And I want you to know, when we went into this, we didn't go into this blindly and put together a cookie cutter proposal based on price and hoping to win this. We really focused on what the county was really looking for from the beginning of the deprivatization process in terms of uplifting inmates, providing support for them, improving the well-being. And we really customized our offer based around those things. It really was a kind of a four-pronged approach. One being was improving inmate well-being by providing more nutritious, healthy meals for the inmates based on the RFP specifications and the quality of food that was required. The second was to enhance the officer dining experience, really to support the officer recruitment and retention efforts that were going on. And third was to make sure that we provided fostering what I would call an operational excellence in the kitchen, not just from a production standpoint, but from making sure that we hired the right employees. We knew that you were taking a page out of your book. You're looking at Geo's wages, looking at potentially improving them by 6% or more. We came into this with a higher wage rate following your lead to make sure we got the right employees and we were fully staffed and from a production standpoint. And then lastly was reducing recidivism. And we talk about some for-profit companies. Certainly we are. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But our company is about reducing recidivism, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we do for a living. But we do have programming in place, our Into-Work vocational program, to help support inmates, give them a post-journey path to success when they leave prison. We actually hire inmates once they've left that are graduates of our program if they're interested in certain services that we offer. So as we talk about finances and other things, I want you to know that we really put thought into what we're doing. I have, those items outlined, and if we're fortunate enough to become your partner, we certainly can give those to you. And so we can talk about living up to those expectations and certainly meeting those as we move forward. So I just want you to know this isn't just about money or providing the lowest bid. We really wanted to make sure we were a good strategic partner for you in both commissary and food service, and really feel that the offer that we put in does that.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate the prior remarks that Aramark is not an organization that's, solely reliant upon the incarceration industry. This is only one small component of the overall, institutional food services business that they provide. So
Thank you.
I get that.
Yep.
I had a question for the young lady, her position. Could you explain exactly when I heard rehabilitative and rehabilitation in that? To me, it's some things going on in my head of what it really is, but could you possibly explain that position and role what you do?
Absolutely, yes. So as Bernie mentioned, I am the director of the actual Into-Work program that he mentioned, which is Aramark's vocational training that we offer to the people who are incarcerated.
That's right.
And we offer that in food service and commissary. We have two different approaches that we take. First being food service, where we offer a phased training. That's to those who are incarcerated who are working in the kitchen. We partner closely with the programs people at the jail. So I have a staff that I come in with, and we partner with the team there to determine the best fit of the program. But we do take a phased approach that kind of ends with the graduation and the graduates earning a certificate. It's a tangible certificate, something they can take into the community to earn employment, whether that be with Aramark, which we would prefer, or members of the second chance hiring community. And Bernie did mention this is something that Aramark is behind. We want to reduce recidivism. We believe in second chance employment, and that's what the main purpose of my role.
And how long has the company been doing this in particular part?
Since 2009.
Can you also speak to what percentage of Aramark's revenue comes from this division of your business, from corrections?
Ooh.
Anyone know?
That's not a question for me.
A rough answer?
Yeah, we'd have to get back to you.
I would assume less than 10%.
Okay, that's good enough. And you're a Philadelphia-based company, right?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Great. Anything else from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion to recommend the approval of a food services contract with Aramark, subject to county council's and the solicitor's approval.
I'll make the motion to recommend Aramark for the food service, subject to county council's approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or comments from the board?
I would approve it, subject to a recommendation to county council that they would explore a unilateral termination provision in the contract if Aramark does not provide adequate services. And secondly, based on what Ms. Love said, prior to the execution of the contract by county council, since we can't execute the contract, and this is just a recommendation, that they have the resources to investigate any complaints against the company that would raise any concern, because one thing we never can lose perspective, and that is we're dealing with individuals that are being housed out there. Their lives are really depending on some of the decisions that we make, as we've seen in recent months, what's going on out there and some of the problems that are occurring out at the prison. So every decision that we make here, we have to make sure is in the best health interest and welfare of the inmates at the George Hill Correctional Facility. So based on those two recommendations to be added, at least from my perspective, I have nothing against Aramark. In fact, I'm for them, but I don't know anything that's been raised that's critical of those services, but they should be at least explored by county council based on what Ms. Love also indicated.
Okay, I think we can make the recommendation to county council, and Ms. Phillips and I and Mr. Lazarus will all be at the council meeting tomorrow. I think we can all, if you're comfortable with it, Your Honor, we can express that that addendum to the recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor of this recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Mr. Alsay, the next item here, commissary.
With commissary, Delaware County issued an RFP and received 4 proposals. And the same committee reviewed the proposals and made a unanimous recommendation to also award to Aramark. The value of the contract is estimated at $873,000 and change. And this contract is not a cost to Delaware County, but it is taking a percent of sales in the commissary, 43% in this case, to be paid into the inmate welfare fund per year. And Aramark offered the best percentage and the best overall services, and also added an incentive that it would reduce the cost per meal in the food services contract and contribute $250,000 towards the kitchen renovation costs if the commissary contract was also awarded to Aramark. That's the summary on the commissary contract, and I'll invite Aramark to come back to answer questions.
Are there questions from the board for Aramark on this service?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment from discussion, and my understanding of the response is that there's some synergy between the commissary and the food service, that's a benefit, that could be a benefit to the detainees in the prison. I thought that was a feature that made it also a favorable response. And I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I sort of seemed in my mind that you'd be able to order something and more customize maybe your food service or your food order if you're there. So I don't know if you could explain that or.
Yeah, that's correct. So I oversee both our food and commissary services. So instead of having two separate vendors where you'd have separate issues, I would be your point of contact for any issues.
But also, I think detainees could order off of the commissary system to get various things from the kitchen, et cetera.
Correct. We have two different programs in terms of food service with commissary. So we have iCare Fresh, which family members can place orders through a website and the meals get delivered to the incarcerated, and then Fresh Favorites, where the inmates will be allowed to place orders off of their commissary funds for fresh prepared food also.
I had a question.
Sorry, just one follow-up on that. How do you, I guess, just to be a bit of a cynic for a moment, is there any sort of, I guess, with that model, would there be any, how do I put this? I guess if there's an upsell, right, that if an inmate via their friends or family would like to pay for a fresher meal or premium meal, is there any risk that provides incentive really for Aramark to provide a lesser product for a sort of free meal? You know what I mean? Again, I'm just trying to be a cynic here for a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That question comes up a lot. No, they're more pub style meals, more grilled chicken, salads, pizza. So if it's the Super Bowl, they want wings and pizza, they can certainly order it at that time. So no, there is absolutely no incentive to us to decrease any value on the regular meal. It just provides the facility. Some facilities use it as a behavioral modification tool as well. So if the facility, their unit's clean, organized, they're allowed to order. If they have behavioral issues, sometimes they're not allowed to order. So sometimes it is used for behavioral modification.
Sorry, Mr. King.
Yes. Is food the only thing they'll be able to order on commissary, or Aramark is just going to be part of the list of commissary through your company?
All commissary items, food, health care, hygiene, all that would be ordered through us.
Okay. Now, if an outside vendor, sometimes outside vendors try to, I guess, negotiate, and I know I'm not talking about contracts on the record, but they would have to buy everything from your commissary and not an outside person if they wanted to.
Correct. Under the RFP, we would be the sole provider of commissary services.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Oversight, just in terms of the synergies between food services and commissary, Aramark spoke to kind of from a service perspective. If you could speak, at an appropriate level in terms of potential economies of scale for the county. So, I think there's sort of an independent, there's a proposal on the table. And my understanding is there is a potential for further savings from that, more on the food side, if both of these are ultimately approved by council. Do I have that right?
Yes. And the economies of scales, as we briefly alluded to, that the food service contract would be reduced by 3 cents per meal, and they would contribute $250,000 towards the kitchen renovation costs if they're awarded the commissary contract. And in terms of operations, as the gentleman said, he would be the single point of contact. If there's an issue with commissary that occurs or an issue with food service, the warden would call him. There wouldn't be two sets of management to work with. It would be one person, one company that would be responsible and responsive.
Any further questions or comments from the board?
I was just curious for the board to consider, because of the interrelationship between the two contracts. Should we add to our motion the same additions that Judge Whalen did to the original?
I have no problem with that. I think Judge Whalen's concerns would be relevant here as well, but I can let the judge speak for himself.
Well, no, I was going to suggest that when we did the vote, that we approve it subject to the same issues raised previously.
And I expect that the law department would be more than willing to have a termination clause in the contract, so, at the county's.
It's up to county council.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever county council, they have the resources and ability to carefully review this.
Yeah, I just want to say, I have confidence that the law department and with the input from our solicitors that the county will be protected legally. So I'm more than willing to be part of the, I attend the meeting with Mr. Lazarus and Councilman Madden, so I'm more than willing to voice the concerns of Judge Whalen. I would say I'm not voting subject to that because I'm willing to vote for this subject to solicitor and council approval and protection from our law department, from our solicitor and our lawyers, so.
And I have a question for our Mark is, I know some facilities in the DOC, they'll have programs such as families can order holiday bags or different things like that. So aside from the fresh meals that you guys might provide, is that also something that you guys have?
Absolutely. We call that our eye care program. So family members, there's a website family members can order different packages from, some health and beauty, hygiene, or food programs. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? All right. I will entertain a motion to recommend the awarding of commissary services to Aramark.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Aramark. And despite my comments previously, I do certainly hope this is the beginning of a long-term relationship.
The next proposal on our on for tonight is the maintenance RFP proposal. The county received one proposal for its RFP, and again, a committee of people from the prison procurement, IT department, Alta and CGL reviewed the proposal. We interviewed U.S. facilities at length, and the committee unanimously recommends award of the maintenance contract to U.S. facilities. The value of the contract is estimated at $919,000 compared to the CGL budget estimate of $882,000 roughly. The contract provides for 7 full-time maintenance staff who would cover the periodic day-to-day maintenance and also day-to-day repairs.
Mr. Alsay, is there someone from U.S.?
Yes, I will have them come up and introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is John Carroll. I'm the Vice President of Correctional Services for U.S. Facilities. And with me is Mr. Rodney Brockenbrow. He's the proposed project manager for your site. U.S. Facilities is a Philadelphia-based company. We have approximately 50 million square feet of contracts in place for facilities management. We have 1,900 direct and contract employees on our payroll. And we have maintained the Philadelphia Department of Prisons, Kern, Fromhold, and Riverside Correctional Facilities, and the Philadelphia Juvenile Justice Center since they opened starting in 1994. We have a near perfect no cells out of order history since 1994. The several times that the cells were placed out of service, they were beyond our control because there was evidence gathering or what have you there. But that's a substantial record since 1994. Mr. Brockenbrough.
And good evening to the board. Again, my name is Rodney Brockenbrow. I'll be joining U.S. Facilities as the project manager for the contract at George W. Hill. It's so approved by the board. My background in corrections is rather extensive, 36 and a half years in corrections, 25 with the City of Philadelphia, 10 years with community education centers. As I'm sure you realize, community education centers operated George W. Hill at one point, and also a year and a half as the chief operating officer of a company that runs juvenile facilities based down in Tampa, Florida. My background has always been in operations, of which the responsibility of the upkeep of the buildings have fallen under my purview, including 6 major facilities, all of which were at least equal in size to George W. Hill in Philadelphia, 20 plus facilities when I was with community education centers, responsible again for the upkeep and management of the facilities. And lastly, the year and a half I spent with True Core Behavioral Services out of Tampa, additionally responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of 20 plus facilities. So I look forward to joining U.S. Facilities and listening to the background and the addition of Warden Laura Williams. Really looking forward to meeting her and being on her team. And I understand the importance of the upkeep of a building in affecting a good treatment environment in a correctional facility.
Thanks. So our selection of Mr. Brockenbrow was intentional for this board. We wanted to make sure that you were completely comfortable with our ability not only to maintain the building, but maintenance and security work together in these facilities. And so we brought 2 experts in one by picking Mr. Brockenbrow, my background with the Philadelphia Department of Prisons, and my immediate supervisors combined over 150 years of experience in the correctional environment. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? I will only comment that, as you may be aware, maintenance has been a persistent concern and something that's been one of the top complaints that we've heard about the current facility, and no doubt a major part of that is going to require investment in the infrastructure, and that's something that is contemplated. But the fact that we're going from currently 3 full-time maintenance folks to what I understand to be 7 full-time staff members in maintenance under your contract, I certainly am excited about what that might do to remove and reduce the complaints that we've been having. I'm excited for this. Okay, if no other comments or questions, I will entertain a motion to recommend the awarding of maintenance services at George W. Hill to U.S. Facilities, subject to County Council's approval. Sorry, who made the motion?
I did.
Thank you, Your Honor. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, gentlemen.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Madge. All right, Ms. Mellon?
As far as my report, the current population is 1,524. There's 1,352 males, 172 county females. On the weekends, we have 39 weekenders reporting, 30 males and 9 females. We had 488 commitments and 545 discharges, and our recidivism rate for November was 59%. Majid kind of stole my thunder, but I would like to welcome Lisa Mastrodi as the Deputy Warden for Administration and as the Transition Manager. Her knowledge of the facility is invaluable to me, and it will be to you guys as we transition to the county. Thanks, Lisa. Sadly, for major incidents, we did have one in custody death. 51-year-old female was found unresponsive in her cell on November 19th at 11:10 p.m. on a routine tour. Staff and medical responded, provided life-saving measures. EMS responded and continued with life-saving measures, but the inmate was declared deceased at 11:45. GTL update, there were 624 video visits in November. To date, there's been 6,691 video visits, and they continue to be free. Inmate messaging, we plan to start on Monday, the 20th. We're working on words that would trigger investigations by our GTL analysts. That's been completed. Messaging on the inmate side is part of their 5-cent usage fee. Friends and families are charged 25 cents per message sent. We're still working on video visitation on the units. We still need to do policy and procedure, and plus we still need to identify staff that could monitor the visits, and since we're short-staffed, that becomes complicated. As behavioral health, we have 2 inmates that will be transported to Norristown later this week. We have 12 people that are on the list that have incompetent evaluations, but are awaiting orders or some kind of diversion. On 12/20, Norristown has a meeting with county staff, probation, parole, the DA. I used to attend those meetings. On the 20th, I'm going to start attending those meetings again, because that's a large number that are waiting court orders. For education, contact teaching continues, same in small, same unit cohorts. In November, we had 31 GED tests administered, a 45% passing rate, and there were 4 GEDs earned, bringing the total to the year to 28, which is really good. There were 51 students enrolled in GED prep, and there were 10 participants in workplace essential skills. Thresholds will receive their yearly training in Prep 1 with 15 completions, 39 participants in Prep 2 with 7 completions. In November, there were 13 people in the MAT Vivitrol program, 11 males and 2 females with 5 graduates. Since then, we've recruited more participants, so currently there are 28 participants, 15 males and 13 females. As far as maintenance, the new tray washer is operational. As of 12/6, we stopped using styrofoam trays. We don't expect a second tray washer till the end of January, but we're operational with one. We're working on with Public Works regarding our heating system. They're going to send out an engineer to review the heating situation regarding our airflow control system and the current HVAC system. And then they're going to provide a report on next steps. As far as with Geo and our heating system, I mean, we are aware of, the issues we have. I've talked to the Geo's facility administrator. We have extra blankets. We have more blankets even on order. They're reading at roll call the policy for heat failure within the facility to provide the inmates with extra blankets or whatever else they need. If we have to move staff, inmates, we will. So we're trying to cover that, best we can. Right now, the weather's pretty warm, so we've been all right. Once again, we partnered with the Coalition for Prison Reform. Assistant Warden Kelly Shaw, who's here too, saw to it that 2,500 holiday cards were given to the inmates. In 3 days, we have 329 returned. We'll work on getting the rest, but postage is paid through the Inmate Welfare Fund. And as friends and family can once again order holiday packs for the inmates. Information is posted on the units on our website. That will begin tomorrow and go through January 15th. So I appreciate your support. I know I have one more meeting to go. It's not exactly what I planned for the holidays, but I think we're doing all right. So thank you.
Trooper Donna. Any questions for the warden?
Yeah.
That's ordered through commissary. Yeah.
Don, I had two questions. Just one, with the MAT expansion program, is that something that GEO is still working on with getting the nurse, or is that something that has stopped?
Brian, honestly, with the nursing in the medical department being so short-staffed with RNs, I think we would need to staff the medical RN before we staff the MAT program RN.
Okay,
That's just an honest answer.
I appreciate it.
And I think with the awarding of medical to a different provider and that transition imminent, I think it's unlikely to expect GEO to do more on that front.
And then my other question was just with our approximate, 500 plus discharges a month, just looking at the Narcan distribution that in the last 16 months, 180 doses have been distributed. And I know it's completely a voluntary basis, but just wondering what kind of education or engagement goes into that, because we know the high percentage of individuals that are being released from George W. Hill that have an opioid use disorder, and the high prevalence of an overdose for someone that leaves and uses, and the fear, if I'm being discharged from prison, that fear of, oh, yes, I'll take that Narcan, because then it's like, oh, do they think that I'm going to use when I leave here? That fear of, by me accepting that, am I incriminating myself? So I'm just wondering what the education engagement is around that to try to reduce that barrier, because 180 doses in almost 2 years, when we have over 500 discharges a month, I'm just wondering how we can work on increasing that, because I think it's something that's definitely needed.
I think I tried to do that the first time around. I'll re-engage the nurse for the Vivitrol program and the prep instructors to try to reassure people to take that on their way out, especially the people that complete the program. I'm not sure if it's that or the paperwork that you have to sign on your way out the door, because everybody wants to leave when they want to leave, and to stop and sign the paperwork. So we'll have to work on how we can adjust that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for the warden? Comments? All right. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at the point in the agenda for our last round of public comment. And this round, it can be on anything, whether it's on the agenda or not on the agenda, but obviously it has to be related to our prison. Please step to the podium. And as previously I mentioned, please say your name and your address, and please keep your mask on while you speak.
Okay.
And please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
That I can do. My name is Robert Ciccanelli. I am on the leadership team of Delco CPR. I'm also the Delaware County convener for the Pennsylvania Prison Society. I live at 6 East Marthard Avenue in Havertown, Pennsylvania. 1 week ago, I and several members of both the Pennsylvania Prison Society and Delco CPR were taken on a walkthrough of the Hill facility. And I want to begin by thanking Acting Interim Warden Donna Mellon and our escort compliance administrator Sarah Bowles, as well as the many staff we spoke with over a 3.5-hour period. We were able to visit 7 areas of our choosing of the facility and speak with the residents on each of those units. And I want to speak directly about 2 concerns that I believe are already known to this board, but just aren't being adequately addressed. The first is best described by a phrase the residents have adopted. They call them 4-day weekends. Unlike what you or I would see as something to be prized, the residents in our jail use this term to describe the total lockdown of the facility every weekend, often going from sometime on Friday until early Tuesday. To be clear, these human beings are confined for up to 96 consecutive hours in the dark and dingy cells, generally without access to showers, and definitely having to eat their meals inside. And I ask every member of this board to try and imagine what kind of hell that is, and how life like this leads to many of the problems that are increasing inside the building. One sergeant explained that he is supposed to have 6 officers in his charge during his shift to allow the normal operation on a 4-pod unit, and that it just doesn't happen. We were told that how many residents are out of their cells on a housing unit is based on how many officers are in the building to respond to an incident. Some housing units can only have 4 or 5 people out of their cells at a time because there are only a handful of officers to back up their brothers and sisters in case of an emergency. On the day we toured, over the course of an entire morning, only one pod on one unit was reasonably out of their cells. I'm going to repeat that. In over 3 hours, and all those pods and all those units, one was actually more or less allowed out. Everybody else was locked in their rooms unless they were in a classroom or on a pass. To many of these people, our arrival was like a breath of fresh air because they were allowed to come out and talk to us for 15 minutes. We understand the concept of an officer to inmate ratio. We understand the need to have enough personnel available in case of a problem. We understand that there can never be a perfect attendance in any workplace that has so many employees. What we cannot and should not accept is that GEO has let their staff dwindle to the point that the men and women on death row in most state prisons are being treated better than those who are in pretrial detention at George W. Hill. We hear the timeline for GEO's departure is early April. To the men, women, and teenagers housed in that jail, that's a very far away dawn. If GEO can't adequately staff the prison any longer, then it's time to think outside the box and fix this. My second concern was the conditions on the intake unit. I've toured a lot of county jails in Pennsylvania over the last 15 years. None of them have men corralled in bullpens, except for George W. Hill. Some of the staff hoped we wouldn't ask to see that area, but we saw it. We saw men sleeping on the floors. We saw rooms that were standing room only with new arrivals and where access to a toilet meant waiting for an officer to let them out and walk them to one. Again, I ask the members of this board to try and imagine spending days like this, eating and sleeping in a cement room where there's barely space for a few of them to lay on cement slabs or on the floor and where no one has had a shower. We board our pets in better facilities. Those bullpens were intended as holding areas for people going to and coming back from court, not as overnight accommodations. GEO could allocate a real housing unit for intake, move the new arrivals of that unit within an hour or two, and continue their classification process there. This is way beyond staffing penalties. It's beyond the point of thinking we can just muddle through until April. It's time to hold GEO's feet to the fire and insist that they keep working 100% to end the barbarism. If we can't do that, then it's time we start looking outside of this room for help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Murphy, 639 Woodcrest Avenue, Ardmore. I was also a member of the visiting team with the Pennsylvania Prison Society that Bob just spoke about, so I just want to talk about a couple other issues. One of the central issues that came up repeatedly on the various housing units that we visited was access to medical care, and this was particularly salient on the female housing unit that we visited. At least 20 people we spoke with cited examples of requesting to see a nurse or doctor that were not met. Many put in multiple requests once a week. We're still waiting weeks to get medical attention. When they were able to meet with medical staff, they then ended up waiting long periods of time to receive needed medications. At least one woman also said that medication times were not consistent, which was affecting how her medication was treating her condition for her mental health. Another woman mentioned having a blood test in October that revealed high blood pressure, but she had still not been given medication for this condition, and this was just last week. Many of the women expressed to be suffering from depression and or anxiety, and they talked about how these conditions were exacerbated by the amount of time that they are forced to be locked in their cells, which Bob talked about quite extensively. There was one officer on the female housing unit that we visited who confirmed how poorly medical care is administered. She gave an example of a woman complaining of menstrual problems and was alarmed by the amount of blood on her in the cell. Despite this, medical did not intervene until 3 days later when a social worker was involved and determined that this woman had miscarried. An additional concern is the lack of cleaning supplies and access to them, considering how much time the people incarcerated are spending inside their cells. They would like to have access to cleaning supplies to have the ability to clean those spaces. These conditions are inhumane and suggest deliberate indifference by prison management. Having adequate access to medical care is a constitutional right for prisoners, as has been determined by the United States Supreme Court, and timeliness is part of adequate medical care. We know that the prison is transitioning and there is a new contract for medical. In the meantime, we think it would be useful to gather data about the number of requests that are being put in, the time that goes between requests and access to care. And this could also provide some benchmark for what we see in the future and hopefully improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy.
My name's Saifuddin M.A. Simpson. I live at 1030 Potter Street, Chester, Pennsylvania. I wasn't going to say anything, but from listening to the Prisoner Society, I decided to get up and say a few things. I know there's probably a lot of people in the room that are looking at me and wondering who I am. I'm the guy that did over 20 years in jail, came home, got my bachelor's degree from Villanova, and got my master's degree from Springfield. I think that what I have heard from the companies that are coming in to the prison, I think they're exactly what this county needs. I was in Delaware County Prison several times. I've been in the riot at Pittsburgh. I was in the riot at Graterford. I was in when the state police came in and took over Graterford. And I've been able to transition my life into what I am right now by being here. I think that I want to, first of all, I want to applaud the county and the JOB and the county council for things that they're doing to help ex-offenders in this county. And I think that even though prison may seem like a bad place, it gets better. And it only gets better by involving people that were in there and lived there and, you know, survived it. I mean, the things I've heard them say, I can remember when there was like 3 or 4 years I never got to visit, but nobody from the prison society. So, but you know, when you're in jail, you're in jail. And if you're strong and if you listen to the right people, you'll change your life and things will get better. And what's happening right now with in Delaware County is a transition that is for the best. And there's people like me and others that are a part of this transition. And the reason we're a part of it, because we have inside information. It's like I'm on both sides of the fence. It's like I know how the warden thinks, but I also know how the inmates think because I'm from the street. I grew up in media. I live in Chester. But if you looked at me, you would have no idea that I was in jail for bank robbery, that I was in jail for drugs, that I was in jail for guns, I was in jail for terroristic threats. You know what I mean? But I changed my life. But what is inside of me that made me like I am now, that I'm standing right here? That's what everybody in the room has to figure out. And that's what everybody has to do. They have to like I used to be on heroin. I hear the heroin task force. I hear all the opiate stuff. I used to be on drugs. I'm not on drugs now. I haven't used drugs. I've been out of jail 20 years. I haven't been high in over 20 years. So what is it that happened to me when I went through thresholds, when I went through Delaware County, when I went through the Department of Corrections that made me like I am now? What it was is I did like the Japanese do. I surrendered. That's how I feel the Japanese did. They surrendered to win. So what we have to do is we have to get these people to just totally give up and go for what we want them to go for and change their life and have an idea that they can get something better. If nobody's going to think that they're going to get nothing better, they're not going to want to do anything different and not change. So, you know, it starts at the prison and it ends there at the prison when they walk out that door. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, any other questions or comments from members of the board?
I just had one brief comment. I just wanted to say, as we're in December, but I really appreciate the perspective of the board members and how we're comprised of Mr. Corson, Mr. King, Ms. Love from healthcare, from reentry, from recovery, and then from our judges and the criminal justice side. And I just want to say that I learned something, and I really do appreciate everybody's input because it's good to get that feedback, and you all ask questions that I would never think of. So thank you.
Certainly, and for my part, I want to acknowledge, I mean, this has been a very significant year in the history of the jail, and this board has accomplished a lot. We haven't always agreed, but to Ms. Phillips's comments, I really appreciate the input and the range of perspectives that we bring here. So thank you to all of you for serving with me this year. And as we heard from the Prison Society, we have no illusions about the fact that there's still much more that needs to be done. And we understand your criticisms under current management. It is why this board has taken action, and council has taken action to transition away from our current prison operator. I think we share your desire to hold them accountable, not 4 months from now, but today. The realities are that, there's only so much we can do absent a termination of the agreement. Our only recourse is to, accept penalties, and that's what we do, but that's not been sufficient to really move beyond what the current circumstances are. So this isn't to dismiss your comments, but understand that we are somewhat limited what we can do. Unless there's anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. We're adjourned.